What's going on, everyone? It is another weekend, which means it's another weekend full of competitive tournaments. It's been a crazy couple of weeks here for Star Wars Unlimited, guys. In terms of competitive play, it has just been tournament after tournament, and mostly it's like store showdowns or like small things in past times we've covered it, but over the past couple of weeks, it's just been a ton of planetary qualifiers, tournaments that actually have some real stakes to them, which means people are coming with some of the better decks, which gives us a ton of information to go off of. Now, there's a ton going on in the US. As of recording this video, I have a bunch of people talking in my Discord, talking about what they're doing in their planetary qualifiers and how they're performing. So huge shout out to them, and hopefully you guys are doing great. Thanks for supporting the channel. But also, we got a bunch from Europe that have already completed, and my goodness, has Vader, new Vader, really shown up. Now, these aren't massive tournaments. Really, we're looking at, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 800 player tournaments where we're talking about the real meta shifts that are happening. But these do have stakes, and they aren't completely small. When I'm thinking small, I'm thinking like 15, 16 players. These do have 30 to 50 to sometimes up to 100 players in these planetary qualifiers. And guys, it's been pretty sweet to see all the decks coming in. So we're going to go over a few of the completed ones from Europe and talk about the list, more specifically Vader. Let's dive into the first one here that we've got, and this one is in Stockholm. We've got a pretty nice spread of lists here, and of course some meta options too. We've got Sabine Green, double yellow Han, double yellow Kazuda, which definitely not meta, so that one I guess I could put in the non-meta category. Bossk Blue, Quinlan Red. I would say Han, Sabine, Quinlan, and Bossk are all considered meta lists. These other ones, maybe you consider them, A or B tier lists, but I wouldn't consider them like tier 0. These are not the lists that you're like building your deck to beat. But Vader Yellow taking down the whole thing, with Yoda Red coming in second, along with Iden Green and Kazuda Yellow. Kazuda Yellow has been something that a lot of people have been messing around with alongside Kazuda Red. It's been a pretty strong list. Iden Green, been around for a while, pretty similar to the old Iden Greens, but this one's using Data Vault, which is kind of like the big thing that's going on right now. But it's really nice to see some of these other lists, including Yoda and Vader. Vader especially taking down the whole tournament. Guys, Vader Yellow, I made a whole video on this, playing this guy. I made another video talking about the best budget decks. Vader Yellow tends to be one of the cheapest lists out there, and it tends to be one of the most competitive lists out there in terms of price per competitiveness of the deck, I guess you could say. Obviously, it's not tier 0, but I definitely would put this into the A tier. The Vader Yellow lists out there, there's just so much really nice things going for it. You have the really nice tempo advantage of having cunning in your list. You have No Good to Me Dead, waylays. You're playing Overwhelming Barrage because you're in Command Villainy, which is an amazing card that can absolutely change the name of the game. That card alone gives you a lot of points to win. But then you're also just having a ton of units flooding the board. And then the addition of Clone Combat Squadron, you can just have units that are like 12 to 13 power because of Clone Combat Squadron, just all the units you're putting on the board. It can be really tricky for your opponents to compete, because not only are you rushing them down, not only are you disrupting their process, but you're also running a 30 HP base, and that could just outrace a lot of people. The next, top 8 that we got to talk about is one from, oh my gosh, Oviedo in Spain. And we've got Garsax in yellow at the top, Ray Green in second, Vader Blue in third. We got Sabine Green in fourth, Piet Red in fifth, Quinlan Red in sixth, Boba Yellow in seventh, and Vader Yellow yet again in eighth. So 2 Vader lists, the only duplicate leader here. And this is even more players in the top 8. Of course, Sabine, Quinlan, even Boba to some degree, not surprising. Garsax in yellow, also not super surprising at this point. I've really hammered home the Gar-Saxon point, I think. Just how strong things like Krennic can be. But multiple Vader lists in the top 8 is pretty insane. And this one, Vader Blue, is not something that I have really messed around with all that much. I've really focused it on Vader Yellow. That's the list that I find to be the strongest. But I'm going to be pulling up both these Vader lists so that we can talk about them and really diagnose what is going on with Vader. We've been seeing a little Piet here and there. I think a lot of people are kind of tuned into what Piet is capable of. Very, very strong potential options. Sometimes you just have the most absurd curve in your entire life. In other games, you just get absolutely ran over. Really depends. A little bit more inconsistency coming from Piet. Ray Green, this is another one where people are just kind of tuned into Data Vault in of itself, and then just being able to leverage, similar to, you know, the Luke greens out there, but on a little bit of a different axis where you get a little bit more combat power with the experience tokens rather than a little bit more value with the shield tokens from Luke. And of course, everyone's known about Boba Yellow. Still hanging in there even after the Triple Dark raid bans, but definitely got a lot weaker. I'm just surprised to see multiple Vaders on this list, guys. It is incredible. Another top 8 here from the Planetary Qualifier in Munich, Germany. We've got Sabine Green in first, Vader Yellow, oh boy, yet again in number second, Anakin Blue, another Sabine Green, Bosk Blue, Kira Green, Luke Green, and another Sabine Green. This is the most meta of the top 8s that I've seen so far. Multiple Sabine Greens, which is definitely one of my favorite decks. We've got Kira Green, a very, very big favorite in a lot of matchups, so pretty, you know, standard to see Kira in there. We've got Luke Green, which is another pretty big one that people have been trying to use and have found out that's pretty good because they wanted the showcase. Well, just the construction of the deck and some of the additions from set 4 alongside Data Vault really bumping up Luke's viability. But guess what? Vader Yellow in second place here. Yet again, another Vader coming in a top 8. This is above the normal inconsistencies that I'm seeing in other kind of strange decks. As I've said many a time, even in bigger tournaments, you could see the kind of what of or the random list getting top 8s. Totally happens. But that doesn't necessarily constitute that it's a stronger deck. Now, most of the time, those top 8 lists, even if they are a one of, are around the B tier range, but Vader has been consistently popping up and performed exceptionally well in the 800 player tournament. So it's not surprising to see Vader yet again in the top 8. We've got another one. This one's a lot smaller. This one we've got Han Green, Vader Red, Sabine Green, and Kira Green. Very, very meta standard. Han Green, Sabine Green, and Kira Green, all pretty much classics. This one, not going to talk about too much because, well, it's a lot smaller. They only have the top 4 here. I mean, I think they had a top 8, but they're only showing the top 4 here. But Vader Red coming in here. This one, much less likely to be seen, but Target's down still pretty good. Works really well with Imperial Interceptor, and Imperial Interceptor just kind of dominating the skies, especially if they're kind of trying to pick off your smaller units. That can be really, really a strong play. I've seen Tarkin be used to pump up all your little tiny space units. Really, really interesting there. Lots of options you have with Vader Red. But then the last top 8 we're going to talk about is from one in Australia. This one, we've got Rey Green, Quinlan Red, Han Blue from set 2, Sabine Green, Kylo Double Red, Boba Yellow, and Double Kira Green. The only top 8 that we're talking about today that does not have a Vader in it, which is pretty crazy. This one, just pretty standard stuff. Again, Kira, Quinlan, Sabine, all, and even Boba and Rey to some extent. Those are definitely lists that you do need to think about. They're definitely on the higher end of a tier. Maybe not Boba Yellow as close as Rey Green, but I think the only surprising ones, or the ones that are a little bit lesser, you know, expected, are going to be the Kylo and the Han Blue. Han Blue's still very, very good. And you got a lot of additions, including like Outer Rim Outlaws, which has been an amazing card in Han Blue, to be honest. You get a turn 1, 3/1 shielded unit, which is pretty sweet. There's a lot of different options you have with Han Blue, especially with more things in the game. This is one of those leaders that just gets better and better. But overall, I mean, pretty good stuff from the top 8. Again, love to see my boy Kylo in there. But I want to dive into, let me just pull up the visual view if I can. Into each of the Vader lists. And it looks like we're not going to get the visual view from this Vader Yellow. But if you just look here, we've got Wingman Victor 2s, we've got Bazines, Boshek as our ground units. If you notice, Wingman Victor 2 and Boshek, both of which going to be pilots for the vast majority of the time into the space arena. We've got things like Y-Wing, the TIE fighters, both as 1-drops. And these are massively important, okay? We even have Mining Guild TIE fighter. These are all super important with First Order TIE fighter. All the different 1-drops coming in. Just being able to really come in and dominate the space arena early on and guarantee you're starting to train of TIE fighter tokens that Vader can create. Following that up, we've got things like, you know, basically value units, Sanctioner Shuttle, Eager Escort Fighter, Death Space Skirmisher, Victor Leader, all of which kind of have one piece of value or another. Victor Leader, obviously able to pump up all your other units. Dead Space Skirmisher, giving you some exhaust potential. Eager Escort Fighter, this one's been a really nice one. You get an Ambusher that basically is guaranteed to kill some of the space units your opponents have, protecting your other units, but also critically getting an attack in so you can kind of guarantee your Vader usage. And, well, Sanctioner Shuttle. Guys, it's been amazing. Being able to just capture something on turn 2 has been absolutely gross. And it's pretty consistent to be able to capture something on turn 2. Because let's say you go double turn 1 space unit, which is very common in the list. One of them dies, let's say. You still get an attack in with one of your other space units. You get to create a TIE Fighter token. You play the Sanctioner Shuttle. Boom, you get to capture something, and you're all set. You have a couple of unique things in here. We've got things like the Geonosis Patrol Fighter, which allows you to exploit some of the other TIE Fighter tokens to just get some more value in it. Clone Combat Squadron becomes a massive space unit. TIE Advance giving some Imperial units some experience tokens. And of course, Lurking TIE, which has been a great one in general for some of the more controlling matchups. We've got things like No Good to Me Dead, Overwhelming Barrage as interaction. Just between these two, it's enough, guys. OB, Overwhelming Barrage, is disgusting. And in this deck, it curves really nicely. Turn 1, you play a couple space units. Turn 2, you capture the thing. Now they're kind of forced to deal with the Sanctioner Shuttle. Turn 3, you play your Clone Combat Squadron. It's probably sitting at like a 5-4 or 6-6. You play OB on the next turn, your Clone Combat Squadron. You're probably getting in for like 8-9 OB damage points. And that is incredible. It is going to wipe the board 90% of the time. It is insane. You also have Waylays, and in this deck they're playing Cunning, which I think is really, really interesting. I didn't actually play Cunning, but I do think it makes a lot of sense. Usually you're winning the game when Vader comes down, so if you're using that logic, the 6-cost event in Cunning is kind of like, this is my win the game turn, right? I just need enough time to be able to deploy Vader and get in all my damage. And that's really, really important because Cunning can buy you that time, but also give you a little bit of extra damage to pump in the last points. And it's really important, even though Cunning is expensive in this list, and generally it wouldn't really be something that I'm normally used to. Well, because Vader comes down on 6 and you do end the game around turn 5, usually, Cunning makes a lot of sense for this list to close out on that turn. So really, really sweet stuff. But as I said, we've got another Vader to talk about, and this is your Vader Blue list that we've been seeing. This one, a little bit attacks on a different angle. We have a little bit more mid-rangey things like Super Laser Technician, a little bit more exploit value like Malevolence, Separatist Battle Tank. I think it's really interesting because what they're trying to do here, get down early space units such as the First Order TIE Fighter, the Kijimi Patrollers, things like that, Onyx Squadron Brute, get in some attacks, but then more importantly, use those attacks and not necessarily rush you down, but for more value, right? Things like the Malevolence, Separatist Battle Super Tank, just kind of come down and be absolute menaces. Also, this deck is playing Director Krennic, which, well, when you're playing Inferno 4, Onyx Squadron Brute, your TIE Ambush Squadron, all of those getting massive discounts is huge. This one's playing a little bit more of a controlling style, which makes a lot of sense, right? If you're playing Vigilance, you may as well go down that path. And you have enough power in the Clone Combat Squadron plus Darth Vader combination to really do some major work. Mind you guys, once again, with Clone Combat Squadron, you're getting +1/+1 for each space unit you control. It starts as a 3/3, but typically you put this down, it's already like a 5/5 or 6/6. When you deploy Vader, and you can sometimes deploy it on Clone Combat Squadron. In fact, most of the time I'm putting it on Clone Combat Squadron because I want it to be a leader unit, so it can't be like Fell the Dragon or Merciless Contested or whatever removal that they typically have. Of course, if they're playing Cunning, that's a risk you'll have to take because they can exhaust it, so just keep that in mind. But even if you're not deploying it on the Clone Combat Squadron, when you pilot Vader, you get an immediate +5 damage, plus an additional 2 onto the Clone Combat Squadron because it creates 2 TIE Fighter tokens, which means it's essentially a 7-powered attacker on that turn if you have the Clone Combat Squadron down, which means you don't really need to win out in the early game. If you can get to the mid-game portion, you don't need to end the game on turn 5, which is what Cunning's trying to do. This list is a little bit more value-oriented, and yes, you can win the game on turn 5, absolutely, but because of things like Entrenched, Malevolence, the exploit synergies and all that stuff, you're trying to get a little bit more value and really kind of dominate your opponent in that direction. I think it's really interesting. This is just 2 of the 3 Vader lists that we had seen in the top 8. There was also a Vader Red. Vader Red's much more uncommon. I've been seeing a lot more Vader Blues and more significantly Vader Yellows. And in terms of results, Vader Yellow kind of dwarfs all the other ones. So just keep that in mind. But Vader, guys, I mean, this guy is the real deal. He is the real deal. If you haven't played some Vader Yellow, definitely give it a shot. If you're looking for A, a budget list, or B, kind of like a tier 1 style of deck that you don't necessarily want to be playing all the Quinlins out there with your own Quinlan, well, Vader Yellow might be the pathway for you. And again, as I said, it runs extremely cheap. If I were to pop back over, go through all these lists, pop back over to the Vader Yellow, if you look through the cards that are being played here, the only expensive card here typically is going to be Victor Leader. Of course, OB can definitely hit like a $2 price tag. Cunning isn't necessary. It is a nice card. I have played a little bit with it, but this one runs 2 in the main deck, which is, well, typically something that I tend to lean towards the sideboard. I think Cunning is an option, and Cunning is expensive, but you do not need to play that in this deck. The Victor Leader runs about $5. Overwhelming Barrage is about $2. I mean, this list with those 2 cards, right? That's like $20. The rest is oftentimes negligible. In some cases, maybe like $1 or $2 here and there. So really, really interesting stuff. Of course, now there's a bunch of Vader Yellows. Maybe the prices have gone up a little bit, but Vader really coming out on top this weekend in terms of just the European and Australian qualifiers that we've seen so far. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Have you guys experimented with Vader at all? Have you done some Vadering? Okay, I want to know. I want to know, because I have, and it is incredibly fun and incredibly strong. We'll see what the other US planetary qualifiers have for us. I will note that the metas in different countries are different, and this is just kind of standard, but the European meta is a little bit different than the US meta, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of a different thing going on. I have noticed that the US definitely steer a little bit more towards the more mid-range style of decks, so we will see. But with that said, thanks for watching, and I will see you all for a video tomorrow.